Hey guys, my name is Jennifer Brave. I'm the founder and owner of Facets Relational Care, and today I'm going to start remaking some of my older videos that I had made 3 years ago. Today I'm going to start with a video called You Might Be an Enneagram Type 1 If. These are just going to be some simple personality traits to look for that might indicate whether or not you are or are not an Enneagram Type 1. You might be an Enneagram Type 1 if you have the reputation as being the very serious person, or perhaps if you perceive yourself to be a very serious person, and specifically if that's something that you're proud of, if you consider that to be one of your better qualities. If you consider honesty, responsibility, being a very trustworthy person as being foundational to having good character, if those are traits that you hyper-focus on in yourself because you want the reputation of being the person who is honest and responsible and trustworthy, or if those are traits that you look for in other people or expect other people to have, or if those are traits that you don't see and it makes you feel really disappointed in other people, you might be a Type 1 if you have a really hard time letting go, letting loose, and just having fun. If you're the sort of person that has a hard time relaxing until all of the work is done, or all of the problems have been solved, or all of the issues have been addressed that you think need to be addressed, you might be an Enneagram Type 1 if you're really hard on yourself. Every time you make even just the smallest mistake. If you're always telling yourself, you know better than this, you could have done better than this is beneath you, etc. If you consider yourself to be a perfectionist, if you feel really anxious if you've gotten something wrong, perhaps you just don't have the right information, or perhaps you didn't know how to do something and you did it wrong, or perhaps you haven't even done it yet and the fact that you just don't know how to do it makes you really anxious because you're afraid that you're going to get it wrong, and you're afraid that the end result of what you do or what you say is going to be less than perfect or less than excellent. If any of that applies to you, you might be an Enneagram Type 1. If you're jealous of other people who seem to have the ability to shirk off their responsibilities and just let loose and have fun without having to worry about what still hasn't been done, you might be an Enneagram Type 1. If you consider yourself to be a very moral, ethical, principled person, and if your sense of morals and ethics and principles are foundational to your life, and if you build your life and your expectations for yourself and for other people off of those things, in other words, if those are your standards by which you judge your behavior and life and other people, you might be an Enneagram Type 1. If you get really frustrated when other people half-ass things and they can get away with it, or if they half-ass things and they get rewarded for it, you might be an Enneagram Type 1. If you and another person do the exact same job, you give it 100%, pay attention to all the details, and make sure that it comes out the best it could possibly be. And they just kind of do what they have to do, just enough to get by. And at the end, you both receive the same rewards, or perhaps just even the same lack of acknowledgement. In other words, if it is not expressed or realized that you put in that extra effort and that's not acknowledged, and that really frustrates you and makes you angry, you might be an Enneagram Type 1. You might be an Enneagram Type 1 if you feel like the whole world would go to hell in a handbasket if you weren't here. In other words, if you feel like you're the one that takes on the most responsibilities, and if you feel like you are the person that holds things together, if you feel like you have to constantly go behind people and clean up their messes, or offer help, or offer advice, if you have to tie up the loose ends because nobody else is paying attention to them, and you feel like that's something you have to do, otherwise everything's just going to fall apart, you might be an Enneagram Type 1 if you've always had this feeling like your life matters. Perhaps you feel like you have a purpose. It might not even be a specific purpose, but if you have this feeling and this awareness that your presence on our planet affects change, and that you should therefore conduct your presence on our planet in a responsible way because you don't want to affect negative change, if you're aware that your being here is important, and your performance and your behavior and your character is built around that idea, you might be an Enneagram Type 1. If you're the sort of person that notices all the tiny little mistakes and details that most other people don't tend to notice, for example, someone has Windex cleaned a piece of glass and you walk by and notice that there's still some streaks left behind. Or perhaps you read a book and in the book you notice punctuation errors or spelling errors, and you might even have the thought, how hard is it to go back and look to make sure the streaks are gone? This is a professional publisher. This is a professional author. How many times did this go through an editor's hands and they still got this on bookshelves with grammatical errors and punctuation errors? If that sort of thing is what you notice and what frustrates you, you might be an Enneagram Type 1. You might be an Enneagram Type 1 if you're the sort of person that can put your emotions and your preferences aside and make hard decisions. If you're the sort of person that can look at a situation, assess a problem, and say, this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do. It doesn't matter if it's inconvenient, it doesn't matter if anybody likes it. This is how it is. We have to do the right thing. We have to choose an excellent standard every time. You might be an Enneagram Type 1 if you never feel satisfied when your work is done. If you finish something and you go away from it and you can still think of things that maybe you could have done better, you might be an Enneagram Type 1. You might be an Enneagram Type 1 if you're really good at holding your shit together under pressure. If you can do more than what the average person could probably do for a long period of time without breaking and without complaining, without giving up and without half-assing it. That is just a very small list of typical cognitive, emotional, and behavioral patterns that we see in someone that has an Enneagram Type 1 personality.